Dasi. And before we begin some teachings from Srimad Bhagavatam, we will start with a prayer to our spiritual masters. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Mancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So today we will be discussing the life of Ajamila. This is a story from Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto and 1st chapter and 2nd chapter. And we'll be discussing how the life of Ajamil was, and then how he chanted the name of Narayan, and then how he perfected his life after that as well. So, Prabhu, if you can put up the 6th canto, 1st chapter translations. And I was thinking if we can have some volunteers who can read a few translations.
I can start.
Anybody
Mataji.
would like to volunteer?
I can start, Mataji.
Sure.
From text 1?
So just to give a background a little bit, actually let's read from the Bhagavatam, because Bhagavatam gives the right background. So yes, go ahead, Balaram.
Chapter 1, The History of the Life of Ajamil. Maharaj Parikshit said, O my Lord, O Sukadev Goswami, you have already described in the 2nd canto the path of liberation, Nivritti Marga. By following that path, one is certainly elevated gradually to the highest planetary system, Brahmaloka, from which one is promoted to the spiritual world along with Lord Brahma. Thus one's repetition of birth and death in the material world ceases.
You want to read few more verses? 2 more?
Okay. O great Shukadev Goswami, unless the living entity is freed from the infection of the material modes of nature, he receives different types of bodies in which to enjoy or suffer, and according to the body he is understood to have various inclinations. By following these inclinations, he traverses the path called Pravritti Marg. by which one may be elevated to the heavenly planets, as you have already described in the 3rd canto. You have also described, at the end of the 5th canto, the varieties of hellish life that result from impious activities, and you have described in the 4th canto the first Manvantara, which was presided over by Swayambhuva Manu, the son of Lord Brahma.
So here in the fifth canto and the previous cantos, what happened was so far that Parikshit Maharaj was asking questions and Shukadev Goswami was giving descriptions. He described the Pravritti Marga, which means how to perform devotional service by following the Vedic knowledge. And then in the 5th canto, towards the end, Shukadev Goswami has given the description of various hellish planets. And the reason a person goes to hellish planets is because of the sinful reactions that he accrues in the current life. And then accordingly, whatever destination or the punishment that he needs to be ordained, that will be done in the hellish planets. So now Shukadev Goswami has described all of this, and Parikshit Maharaj is asking. So can you read one more verse, Balaram?
My dear Lord, you have described the dynasties and the characteristics of King Priyavrata and King Uttanapad. The Supreme Personality of Godhead created this material world with various universes, planetary systems, planets and stars, with varied lands, seas, oceans, mountains, rivers, gardens, and trees, all with different characteristics. These are divided among this planet Earth, the luminaries in the sky, and the lower planetary systems. You have clearly described these planets and the living entities who live on them.
And the text number 6.
O greatly fortunate and opulent Shukadev Goswami, now kindly tell me how human beings may be saved from having to enter hellish conditions in which they suffer terrible pains.
So Parikshit Maharaj, he was a great devotee of Krishna. When he heard that because of the sinful reactions, the living entity has to go through different hellish planets, because of the natural compassion of a devotee, he asked Shukadev Goswami, what is the way where the living entity doesn't have to go through the hellish planets? Can you suggest a solution to this problem? And then Shukadev Goswami starts speaking, and he starts giving the solution of how a person can get rid of their sinful reactions and may not have to go to the hellish planets. So next verse.
Would you like me to read, Mataji?
Yes, please.
Shukadev Goswami replied, My dear king, if before one's next death, whatever impious acts one has performed in this life with his mind, words, and body are not counteracted through proper atonement according to the description of the Manu Samhita and other dharma shastras, one will certainly enter the hellish planets after death and undergo terrible suffering, as I have previously described to you. Therefore, before one's death comes, as long as one's body is strong enough, one should quickly adopt the process of atonement according to Shastra. Otherwise, one's time will be lost, and the reactions of his sins will increase. As an expert physician diagnoses and treats a disease according to its gravity, one should undergo atonement according to the severity of one's sins.
So here Shukadev Goswami is saying that before you give up the current life, you should actually adopt a process of atonement. And this process of atonement is not there just in the Vedic scriptures, but it is practiced by many other religious sects as well. And we also have in Christianity also, there is a process of atonement where you go and confess to your sins. And here Shukadev Goswami is saying that to the degree of the sins that you have performed, to that degree you have to perform atonement. So, for example, today, if a person is actually commits a murder or something like that, there used to be a capital punishment. And nowadays, the capital punishment is actually not being utilized for many reasons. But that punishment was there to actually help the soul, because when the capital punishment is awarded, the person actually gets atonement for the sins that he or she has performed. So this atonement is required. That's what Shukdev Goswami is saying. And then later he describes many different processes of atonement, but this is essential. That's what he's saying. Prabhu, can somebody read next 2 verses?
I can read, Mataji.
Sure, thank you.
Maharaj Parikshit said, one may know that sinful activity is injurious for him because he actually sees that a criminal is punished by the government and rebuked by people in general, and because he hears from scriptures and learned scholars that one is thrown into hellish conditions in the next life for committing sinful acts. Nevertheless, in spite of such knowledge, one is forced to commit sins again and again, even after performing acts of atonement. Therefore, what is the value of such atonement? Sometimes one who is... Sorry, should I continue?
Go ahead.
Sometimes one who is very alert so as to not commit sinful activities is victimized by sinful life again. I therefore consider this process of repeated sinning and atoning to be useless. It's like the bathing of an elephant. For an elephant cleanses itself by taking a full bath, but then throws dust over its head and body as soon as it returns to the land.
Mm-hmm. So, Shukdev Goswami, when Parikshit Maharaj asked that question, he immediately started explaining the process of atonement. And first, he gave him the process through the fruitive results, which are using karma kanda. So, in the Vedas, it is given that if you perform this sinful act or this act, then there is a remedy for that by performing another pious act. And then, when the results of the pious act is done, then the person again commits a sinful act, and this process goes on again and again. The process of committing sins, atoning, committing sins, and atoning. So Shukadev Goswami was actually trying to test Parikshit Maharaj to see the student, to see if he's actually accepting the solutions that he is given. But Parikshit Maharaj was an expert student. He rejected immediately. He rejected the solution given by Sukadev Goswami. He said, what is the use of this atonement? Because even if you commit sins, then go take an atonement, and then again you go back and commit sins. Like he's giving the example of elephant bathing in the river, and as soon as it comes out, it actually gets some sand and puts it on its head. So what's the point in doing that kind of an atonement? So then Shukadev Goswami is now happy with his student that, he's asking the right kind of questions until he finds a satisfactory answer. So then he goes on, he asks that question again, and then Shukadev Goswami answers it. Can you read a few more, Manya?
Yes, Mataji.
Thank you.
Shukadev Goswami, the son of Vedavyas, answered, my dear king, since acts meant to neutralize impious activities are also fruitive, they will not release one from the tendency to act fruitively. Persons who subject themselves to the rules and regulations of atonement are not at all intelligent. Indeed, they are in the mode of darkness. Unless one is freed from the mode of ignorance, trying to counteract one action through another is useless, because this will not uproot one's desires. Thus, even though one may superficially seem pious, he will undoubtedly be prone to act impiously. Therefore, real atonement is enlightenment in perfect knowledge, Vedanta, by which one understands the supreme absolute truth.
So then Shukadev Goswami then he answered, he said that these fruitive activities, which means the ones that you do with the Vedas, trying to do a sin and neutralize it and keep on doing that, this actually will not uproot the the desire to commit sinful activities in the first place. So that's why he's saying, like, you should get up, you should also get to the root of the desire. So, and then you should start correcting that through jnana yoga. Now he's giving, first he gave the karma kanda, and now he's asking them to use the jnana process, that is through knowledge. So if you have the knowledge that by whatever action that you are performing will have other reactions to it, then one is very conscious of performing that act, right? I mean, if you know that if you walk too close to the bridge, at the edge of the bridge, you might fall down, then you'll be very careful not to go there or to be very far away. But if you did not even know that you would fall, then you would just be careless and you would be committing mistakes even without knowing it. So that's why he recommended the process of jnana, which means knowledge. Try to acquire knowledge. But then, knowledge, acquiring process of knowledge is also, he says that it is like Parikshit Maharaj said, yes, it is good. But then in the process of acquiring knowledge, one can come to a point saying that, I'm not the spirit soul, but I might be the Brahman, I might be the supreme person. So that is very dangerous. So then Prabhupada in this, in the purport, he quotes, Yeni Aravindaksha Vimukta Maninas, that verse which says that even though you are a jnani, even if you perfect your to come to a point that you are Brahman, you might think that you are that Brahman, and then there is a tendency, there's always a possibility that you will fall down unless you take the shelter of the supreme personality of Godhead. So that's where he says that Gyan process, like atoning through the process of Gyan, is also not perfect. So can you read a few more verses?
Yes, Mataji.
Manya?
Yes, Mataji. My dear king, if a diseased person eats the pure, uncontaminated food prescribed by a physician, he's gradually cured, and the infection of disease can no longer touch him. Similarly, if one follows the regulative principles of knowledge, he gradually progresses toward liberation from material contamination. To concentrate the mind, one must observe a life of celibacy and not fall down. One must undergo the austerity of voluntarily giving up sense enjoyment. One must then control the mind and senses, give charity, be truthful, clean, and nonviolent. Follow the regulative principles, and regularly chant the holy name of the Lord. Thus, a sober and faithful person who knows the religious principles is temporarily purified of all sins performed with this body, words, and mind. These sins are like the dried leaves of creepers beneath a bamboo tree, which may be burned by fire, although their roots remain to grow again at the first opportunity.
Another problem or another flaw with the Gyan process is that you have to follow a lot of rules and regulations, one including celibacy and concentrating the mind and everything. And we have heard in the story of Vishwamitra, who was a great yogi, and he was performing tapasya for thousands of years. But then he could, but because Menaka, a celestial lady, came and disturbed him a little bit, and then he actually could not concentrate for his meditation. So by the process of Gyan Yoga, there's always a possibility that you might fall down unless you follow all those rules and regulations. So the example is given, a beautiful example given in this translation. It says that it is like, you have, like, if there's a bush of trees or dried leaves, that dried leaves actually by the process of Gyan are burnt up on the surface. When you see, the surface is all burnt up because there are no leaves because of the fire, but the roots might still be active beneath, and once with the first rain or something like that, and it will start growing up back again. So then Parikshit Maharaj does not accept this solution also given by Shukadev Goswami, saying that the Gyan could be the process of atonement. So then Shukadev Goswami goes on with his next. Can somebody read the next few verses, please?
I can read one verse, Mataji.
Sure, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Only a rare person who has adopted complete unalloyed devotional service to Krishna can uproot the weeds of sinful actions with no possibility that they will revive. We can do this simply by discharging devotional service, just as the sun can immediately dissipate fog by its rays. Translate.
Actually, this is, Prabhu, if I can hold on for 1 second.
Okay.
This is actually a very beautiful verse. It goes as the Sanskrit says as Kechit kevalaya bhaktya vasudeva parayanaha agam dhunvanti karsneya niharam eva bhaskara. So here it is explained that only the person, rare person, Kechit means some people only, very few people who do kevalaya bhaktya. Kevalaya bhaktya means unalloyed devotional service to whom? To Vasudeva or Lord Krishna. That person actually only will be able to get rid of the roots, can uproot the weeds, not only just burn the surface, but they can uproot the weeds so that there's no possibility of its coming back. And the example that Shukadev Goswami is giving here is that the example of sun. There, it may be foggy in the beginning, but as soon as the sun comes in, the fog actually gets destroyed or is dissipated by the rays of the sun. Similarly, by the devotional service to Lord Krishna, that is a process where you can actually uproot the weeds of those sinful activities. That is a very beautiful verse here. If somebody wants to memorize it, it's a nice verse. Prabhu, please go ahead, Prabhu.
Translation or go to 17?
Translation, Prabhu, translation.
My dear King, if a sinful person engages in the service of a bona fide devotee of the Lord and thus learns how to dedicate his life under the lotus feet of Krishna, he can be completely purified. One cannot be purified merely by undergoing austerity, penance, brahmacharya, and the other methods of atonement I have previously described. Continue.
So here, now Shukadev Goswami is saying that, whatever previously I told about the karma kanda, or then by the process of gyan, that is not complete. But he actually gives a solution to perform devotional service, and also he's saying that such person can be completely purified. Go ahead, Prabhu.
The path followed by pure devotees who are well behaved and fully endowed with the best qualifications is certainly the most auspicious path in this material world. It is free from fear and it is authorized by the Shastras.
And here he also describes performing devotional service means we should follow the path of the great devotees or the great acharyas, because this path is actually very, very auspicious, and it is also authorized in the Shastras, because the devotees of Lord Krishna, they are endowed with all good qualities. And Prabhupada uses the words here, Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavatya kinchana sarver gunais tatra samasate sura harava bhaktasya kutu mahadgunat. So he says that the devotees, we have to follow the devotees of Lord Krishna because the devotees are perfect in their behavior and they are endowed with all godly qualities. Prabhu, go ahead, Prabhu.
My dear King, as a pot containing liquor cannot be purified, even if washed in the waters of many rivers, non-devotees cannot be purified by processes of atonement, even if they perform them very well.
Shukadev Goswami gives another very beautiful example here. So, if a person actually is performing sinful actions, and they wanted to purify themselves, and the tendencies are still within their heart, but they are trying to dip in the process of karma and then jnana. And then he says, if you have a pot of liquor, and you take that pot of liquor and you go to all the holy places, you go to Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati, all the holy places. And then you go and dip the pot in every place. And then once you take that pot out, you think that that pot will be purified? No. And why not? Because of the contents inside it, right? The contents itself is actually impure. So what is the use of actually just dipping the external pot outside in holy rivers like Ganga, Yamuna, and all those places? So the tendencies will still be there. That's what he's saying here. Go ahead, Prabhu. You can read.
Although not having fully realized Krishna, persons who have even once surrendered completely unto his lotus feet and who have become attracted to his name, form, qualities, and pastimes are completely freed of all sinful reactions. For they have thus accepted the true method of atonement. Even in dreams, such surrendered souls do not see Yamaraja or his order carriers who are equipped with ropes to bind the sinful.
This is such an encouraging verse, actually, because here Shukdev Goswami is giving that. But on the other hand, if a person who is practicing devotional service, even though they may not be able to do it perfectly, even though if they do a little bit, once they have taken the process of devotional service, they're saying like the Vishnu, the Yamadutas or the order carriers of Yamaraj who will take you to the hellish planets, they won't even visit you in your dreams. That is such an encouraging verse here, because Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, Neha Vikrama Nashosi Pratyavayuna Vidyate Swalpamapyasya Dharmasya Trayate Mahatu Bhayat. If you perform this devotional service, even a little bit, swalpam, very little, it will actually protect you from the great dangers, actually. And also in the first canto, fifth chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, Yatraka Vabhadram Abhudam Ushyakim. So that in that verse also it is said that if a person who is performing devotional service, who is apakva, which means who is not completely ripe yet, which means he has not completed the process of devotional service, but if that person, even if they fall down, there is no loss in the process of devotional service. But on the other hand, even if you perform perfectly the fruitive activities, what is the use if you have not developed an attachment for the lotus feet of Krishna? Okay, next one, Prabhu.
In this regard, learned scholars and saintly persons describe a very old historical incident involving a discussion between the order carriers of Lord Vishnu and those of Yamaraja. Please hear of this from me.
So now he has just given a solution. Shukadev Goswami has given a solution, and now the solution that he's actually giving a history or a story, or it's not a made-up story, but it's actually a history that Parikshit Maharaj, Shukadev Goswami heard this from Agastya Muni. When Agastya Muni was actually performing his devotional service, he actually narrated this story or his history to Shukdev Goswami, and Shukdev Goswami is actually bringing this incident as an evidence to prove whatever he said actually about devotional service is true. So then he starts telling about the story of Ajamil, and it goes from here. Prabhu, please go ahead, Prabhu.
In the city known as Kanyakubja, there was a Brahmana named Ajamila who married a prostitute, maid servant, and lost all his Brahmanical qualities because of the association of that low-class woman.
So actually, this he started narrating the story of Ajamil. He was born in a city known as Kanyakubja, and this Kanyakubja, it is actually modern-day Kanoi. You might be knowing, and this is a place well known for Brahmanas at certain point. The Brahmanas here were considered to be very, very, very pious. So much pious and they used to follow the rules and regulations so strictly that if someone from Kanoi or Kanyakubja came to cook they were supposed to give in 7 stoves, because they will not mix one stove with the other stove. Like if you were like when I was growing up also, like my parents, they never used to mix rice pot with milk pot. They have certain rules and regulations that they follow from the Shastras. Just the point just to say is that, they were very strict Brahmanas at that time. And Ajamil was actually coming from that family, that kind of a family, where all the processes of devotional service were perfectly performed. Go ahead, Prabhu.
This fallen Brahmana Ajamila gave trouble to others by arresting them, by cheating them in gambling, or by directly plundering them. This was the way he earned his livelihood and maintained his wife and children.
So here the story of Ajamil is further explained. So this Ajamil, what happened one day was, while he was walking, he saw a prostitute, and the prostitute was actually embracing another man. And when this person actually, when Ajamil saw that, he actually tried to control himself based on the Shastras and everything that he has learned, to not look at that and then continue his service. But somehow or other, he couldn't control himself. And then he went ahead and asked the prostitute to come, and then he made the prostitute to be a servant, as a maid servant at his home. And then, though he was a very strict, nice Brahmana, he actually started associating with her. And then he had he had children, and he was maintaining the prostitutes' children also, many of them. And as you know, the prostitutes, they actually are not easy maintenance. They expect a lot of comforts, they expect a lot of money, and people are ready to throw money at them. So how can the prostitute be happy with Ajamil? So then, he has to get a lot of money. And how this how this Ajamil was getting money for her was through all the sinful reactions. He was actually trying to get them by arresting others, by gambling, by plundering, by kidnapping, and this is how he was actually getting money so that he could maintain that prostitute and her children. Go ahead, Prabhu.
My dear king, while he thus spent his time in abominable sinful activities to maintain his family of many sons, 88 years of his life passed by. Years.
Yeah. One more, Prabhu.
That old man Ajamila had 10 sons, of whom the youngest was a baby named Narayana. Since Narayana was the youngest of all the sons, he was naturally very dear to both his father and his mother.
So here he's called as old man. Can you guess how old was Ajamil when he had his son Narayan? Anybody?
88.
Sorry?
70.
No, 88 years it says, right?
He was 83 when he had his son named Narayan. And then at the age of 88, he was actually about to die. So generally, Prabhupada says that for a Vanapras, a person who is performing devotional service, at the age of 50, he should start to widen down and focus a little bit more on spiritual practices rather than more on the other activities to maintain the family and everything. That a person can do until the age of 50, but after that, slowly, they should try to focus more on spiritual activities. But this poor Ajamil, even at the age of 83, at that time he had a son, and the good thing was that he named his son as Narayan. His name was Narayan. There's a nice story also how this name Narayan came. This was given by Radha Govinda Maharaj. So that because Ajamil was very sinful, he was plundering and everything, everybody was actually making fun of him. All of the people were making fun. And so once some sages actually came to that town where Ajamil was living, and then they asked, do you know any place where we can stay tonight? Any sadhus here? And then the kids actually were making fun of Ajamil, and then they said, yes, there is a person called Ajamil Sadhu. You can go to his home, and he will take very good care of you. And the sadhus, the sages, they did not know who that Ajamil was, and that he lives with a prostitute. They innocently went to the Ajamil's home, and then they knocked, and then they said, we are sages, we came here. Would you happen to have a place for us to stay for the night? And the wife actually the wife actually was there, and she says, there is this place there was a covered parking spot kind of a thing. He said, you can stay there. And she actually goes and cleans up the place very nicely, and she makes some place comfortable for the sages to stay. And then she brings some raw materials, which is like raw rice, raw dal, and some raw vegetables. And then she gives it to the sadhus, and she says, you please cook this, and you can make your own prasadam and you can eat. And the sadhus, not knowing that who this Ajamil and his prostitute was, they happily cook for themselves, and they make an offering. Then they have prasadam, and they sleep under that shelter at night. But by the next morning, the villagers actually come to the sadhu, and then they explain everything. The sadhu then saying, this Ajamil is not a sadhu, he's a prostitute and everything. And then the sadhus actually think, because sadhus or devotees actually are very compassionate, right? They wanted to see how they can do good for them. They realized that at the time when they knocked the door, they realized that the prostitute was pregnant at that time. So all the sadhus, they were packing up their things, and before they were leaving, the prostitute comes and says, to thank them. And then the sadhu says, can I ask you for a favor? And then and she says, yes, please tell me, what can I do for you? And then the sadhu says, I see that you're having a child. Can you name your child as Narayan? And the prostitute thinks that, anyway, I have to name something, why not I name Narayan? And then she says, yes, we will name the son Narayan. And then when Ajamil comes back home, she explains the sadhus have come and everything, and she tells as a request from the sadhus that please name your son as Narayan. And the moment he starts saying Narayan, he just says Narayan, and he becomes very happy. He starts thinking about the son who will be born and whose name would be Narayan. And that is actually one of the turning points for Ajamil, that the child actually started creating the devotion in his heart. And whatever he was doing before, when he was younger, he was doing all the Shaligram worship and everything before he fell down because of the prostitute. He actually starts, not remembering, but he felt happiness when he started chanting the name of Narayan. He was not doing it intentionally, that he's saying the name of the Lord, but he was just thinking about the son Narayan who will be born. Prabhu, should we do the next one?
Somebody wants to do it, let it them.
Yes. I can do it, Mataji.
I can read Mataji.
Please go ahead.
Mataji, I think other Mataji also said she can go ahead. I can read after her.
No, Mataji, you go ahead. We can do, okay. Mataji can do the other ones.
Because of the child's broken language and awkward movements, old Ajamila was very much attached to him. He always took care of the child and enjoyed the child's activities. When Ajamila chewed food and ate it, he called the child to chew and eat. When he drank, he called the child to drink also, always engaged in taking care of the child and calling his name, Narayana. Ajamila could not understand that his own time was now exhausted and that death was upon him. When the time of death arrived for foolish Ajamila, he began thinking exclusively of his son, Narayana. Mataji, should I continue?
Well, we can hold on for just a minute. Okay. So the child was very attached to his son, and like any other father, right? Like when the son smiled, then he will be very happy, and when he would eat, actually he would feed from his own plate. He would say, please eat this food properly, please drink this water. Narayan, do this one. Narayan, come here. And when Narayan would walk, he would become very happy. Like any other normal parent, he actually was very attached. But the only good thing was actually his name was Narayan. That's a good thing that he has done. But while he was doing this, the time for him to die came. Nobody can stop that, right? So the time for him to die came, and when it arrived, he saw that he was, at the time of death also, he was thinking of his son only. He didn't actually think of actual Narayan, but he was thinking about his son Narayan. Mataji, go ahead, Mataji.
Ajamila, Hare Krishna. Ajamila then saw three awkward persons with deformed bodily features, fierce twisted faces, and hair standing erect on their bodies. With ropes in their hand, they had come to take him away to the abode of Yamraja. When he saw them, he was extremely bewildered, and because of the attachment to his child, who was playing a short distance away, Ajamila began to call him loudly by his name. Thus, with tear in his eyes, he somehow or other chanted the holy name of Narayana.
So, because of the sinful reactions that he did, the books of Chitragupta were so full. They could not stop writing because he was doing all sorts of sinful activities. And then at the time of death, then naturally they thought that because of all the sins that he has committed, the representatives of Yamaraj, they are called Yamadutas, they came and they wanted to take him towards Yamaluka. And but at the time he was when he saw those Yamadutas, Yamadutas were very awkward. They had this copper kind of hair. They had deformed bodies, and they had these big ropes in their hand. They were like strongly built. And the moment Ajamil actually saw, he actually was so scared. And they say that at the time of death, people actually pass stool and urine because of the fear that they experience. And then Ajamil, he understood his time has come where where he will be taken away to the Yamaloka. So that's where he remembered his son, thinking that his son would protect him. He called him Narayan. But Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that Antakale chamameva smaran muktva kalevaram. At the time of death, if somebody remembers me, then I will definitely protect that person, right? So because he chanted the name of Narayan, the Vishnu Dutas, who are representatives of Lord Vishnu, they immediately came down. And they actually came down because he uttered the name of Narayana, though he was very sinful. Mataji, please go ahead with the next verse, Mataji.
O dear king, the order carriers of Vishnu, the Vishnu Dutas, immediately arrived when they heard the holy name of their master from the mouth of dying Ajamila, who had certainly chanted without offense because he had chanted in complete anxiety. The order carriers of Yamaraja were snatching the soul from the core of heart of Ajamila, the husband of the prostitute. But with a resounding voice, the messengers of Lord Vishnu, the Vishnu Dutas, forbade them to do so.
So here, the sinful activities that a person performs is through body, mind, and words. So there are three kinds. In the age of Kali Yuga, even if you think bad within your mind, you're actually exempted because Kali Yuga has that. But the ones that you with your body and mind, body and words, still counts. So because Ajamil, the number of sins that he has performed were so many that there were three Yamadutas came. One because to remind him of the sinful activities because of mind, body, and then words. And then these Yamadutas, when they came, they actually tried to snatch the soul from his body. This in this one, Prabhupada clearly mentions how the soul actually sits within the region of the heart, in the heart, and they were actually trying to snatch the soul out of this body. And then in the fifth canto, Parikshit Goswami explains what happens, a little bit journey. I don't know. I know that nobody likes to hear this kind of gruesome things that happens towards when the person is taken towards the hellish planets. But just to get some idea, right? A person who commits sinful activities, in order for them to experience the pain that they caused to others, the soul is taken to the hellish planets, Yamaloka, and where the soul experiences severe amount of pain caused because of that they cause for other living entities or other people. So they are given a body called as Yatana Sharira, which means that body, or the Yatana Sharira, is a kind of a body that is given which can give you pain 100 times more than your actual body can experience. I mean, we may have like some experience about this, not the same, but when you actually get bruised or when you get hurt on your hand or leg or somewhere, and at the place where you bruised yourself or cut yourself, even if a small pin actually touches that place, you feel extreme pain. Maybe other parts will not have same pain, but then that part actually becomes very extremely sensitive. So similarly, you can imagine that a special kind of body is given called Yatana Sharira, where you are actually experiencing a lot of pain as a process of atonement for the sinful activities that a person has performed. And they take them, they actually drag the soul towards the Yamaloka, and they're not treated very well there, because you're taken to a place where you're supposed to atone for your sinful activities. So it's a place of punishment. So the Yamadutas were ready to take Ajamil to that kind of a place, very, very difficult kind of a place. But then Vishnu Dutas, they actually stopped him. You can read the next verse, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. When the order carriers of Yamaraja, the son of the sun god, were thus forbidden, they replied, "Who are you, sirs, that have the audacity to challenge the jurisdiction of Yamaraja? Dear sirs, whose servants are you? Where have you come from, and why are you forbidding us to touch the body of Ajamila? Are you demigods from the heavenly planets? Are you sub-semigods, or are you the best of devotees?" The order carriers of Yamaraja said, "Your eyes are just like the petals of lotus flowers, dressed in a yellow silken garment, decorated with garlands of lotuses, and wearing very attractive helmets on your heads and earrings on your ears. You all appear fresh and youthful. Your 4 long arms are decorated with bows and quivers of arrows, and with swords, clubs, conch shells, discs, and lotus flowers. Your effulgence has dissipated the darkness of this place with extraordinary illumination. Now, sirs, why are you obstructing us?"
So when Vishnudutas came there, just when the Yamadutas were trying to pull the soul out of the body, the Vishnuduta says, or to Yamara, in a loud voice, the Vishnuduta said, "Stop! Don't take him." And then these Yamadutas were puzzled. They were thinking, who is this person? And who are these people? Why are they stopping us? We are the representatives of Yamaraj. Yamaraj is like a Supreme Court justice. He is head, and then he actually will take care of all the people, and they will actually give proper punishment according to the activities that are performed. So they were saying, we are the ones who are supposed to punish people. Why are you coming and stopping us? And then they were saying, like, but you look very beautiful. Like they gave a description of how the Vishnudutas looked, you have beautiful eyes, you're wearing nice garments and all these things, who are you? And this person is very sinful. And why are you stopping us from punishing this sinful person? That's what they asked him. Mataji, you want to read some more, or the other Mataji can read some?
Other Mataji can read Mataji. Yeah, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji.
Yeah, Mataji, can I read? I think I was...
Yes, Mataji. Haribol Nikunja, Mataji, please do.
Haribol Mataji. Text 37. Sukadeva Goswami continued. Being thus addressed by the messengers of Yamaraja, the servants of Vasudeva smiled and spoke the following words in voices as deep as the sound of rumbling clouds. Text 38. The blessed messengers of Lord Vishnu, the Vishnu Dutas, said, if you are actually servants of Yamaraja, you must explain to us the meaning of religious principles and the symptoms of irreligion.
This is a very nice verse. And Balram, if you can bring the purport for this verse, please. Mataji, would you read the purport also?
Sure, Mataji. Purport. This enquiry by the Vishnu Dutas to the Yamadutas is most important. A servant must know the instructions of his master. The servants of Yamaraja claim to be carrying out his orders, and therefore the Vishnu Dutas were intelligently asked them to explain the symptoms of religious and irreligious principles. A Vaishnava knows these principles perfectly well because he is well acquainted with the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Lord says, Sarva dharman parityagya mam ekam sharanam vraja. Give up all other varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. Therefore, surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the actual principle of religion. Those who have surrendered to the principles of material nature instead of to Krishna are all impious, regardless of their material position. Unaware of the principles of religion, they do not surrender to Krishna, and therefore they are considered sinful rascals, the lowest of men, and fools bereft of all knowledge. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 7.15, Namam duskritino mudha prapadyante naradhama mayaya partha jnana ashuram bhavam ashritaha. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. One who has not surrendered to Krishna does not know the true principle of religion. Otherwise, he would have surrendered. The question posed by the Vishnu Dutas was very suitable. One who represents someone else must fully know that person's mission. The devotees in the Krishna consciousness movement must therefore be fully aware of the mission of Krishna and Lord Chaitanya. Otherwise, they will be considered foolish. All devotees, especially preachers, must know the philosophy of Krishna consciousness so as not to be embarrassed and insulted when they preach.
So this is a very nice instruction that Srila Prabhupada gives, that the Yamadutas, they were saying that we are here to protect the dharma and give the proper punishment to everybody. But the Vishnudutas were saying, you should know what you're talking about. And Prabhupada also gives us, if you're a preacher, then you must know the mission of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Krishna. What is their mission? Because we have to represent them. So that is actually a very nice point that Vishnudutas brought up. Mataji, can you read a few more translations?
Sure, Mataji.
Thank you.
Text 39. What is the process of punishing others? Who are the actual candidates for punishment? Are all karmis engaged in fruitive activities punishable or only some of them? Text 40. The Yamadutas replied, that which is prescribed in the Vedas constitutes dharma, the religious principles, and the opposite of that is irreligion. The Vedas are directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, and are self-born. This we have heard from Yamaraja.
So they started asking questions. So who is considered as punishable. And then Yamadutas, they start describing, saying that, the Vedas actually constitute the dharma, and the Vedas are coming directly from the from Narayan, the Supreme Godhead. And then they said that this they have heard from Yamaraj. See, they are giving their source. Because if you see in Yamaloka, they're all servants of Yamaraj. But Yamaraj he's a Mahajan. He's one of the 12 Mahajans. And Yamaraj actually has taught the Vishnu Dutas, and they are saying we learned this from Vishnu. Sorry, has learned from Yamaraj, and then they are just following Yamaraj's instructions. And then after this, they give an elaborate description about how a soul actually falls into the sinful reactions because of the association with the modes of material nature. I think we can skip that, and can we go to verse number 56, 57 translation?
In the beginning, this Brahmana named Ajamila studied all the Vedic literatures. He was a reservoir of good character, good conduct, and good qualities, firmly established in executing all the Vedic injunctions. He was very mild and gentle, and he kept his mind and senses under control. Furthermore, he was always truthful. He knew how to chant the Vedic mantras, and he was also very pure. Ajamila was very respectful to his spiritual master, the fire god, guest, and the elderly members of his household. Indeed, he was free from false prestige. He was upright, benevolent to all living entities, and well behaved. He would never speak nonsense or envy anyone.
So now the Yamadutas are giving the flashback, the background of Ajamil. And Shukadev Goswami did not describe it because he was describing the conversation of the Yamadutas. Yamataji, please go ahead further. They're telling how Ajamil was so good before.
Once this Brahmana Ajamila, following the order of his father, went to the forest to collect fruit, flowers, and two kinds of grass called Samit and Kusa. On the way home, he came upon a Shudra, a very lusty fourth-class man who was shamelessly embracing and kissing a prostitute. The Shudra was smiling, singing, and enjoying as if this were proper behavior. Both the Sudra and the prostitute were drunk. The prostitute's eyes were rolling in intoxication, and her dress had become loose. She was the condition in which Ajamila saw them. Translation text 61. The Shudra, his arm decorated with turmeric powder, was embracing the prostitute. When Ajamila saw her, the dormant lusty desires in his heart awakened, and in illusion he fell under their control. As far as possible, he patiently tried to remember the instructions of the Shastras, not even to see a woman. With the help of his knowledge and his intellect, he tried to control his lusty desires. But because of the force of Cupid within his heart, he failed to control his mind.
It's not that Ajamil was ignorant, he actually knew the Shastras, and he actually tried to implement what he learned. But somehow he couldn't give it. Somehow he just gave in to the lust, and then he actually went with the prostitute. Mataji, the next one also.
Text 63. In the same way that the sun and moon are eclipsed by a low planet, the Brahmana lost all his good sense. Taking advantage of this situation, he always thought of the prostitute, and within a short time he took her as a servant in his house and abandoned all the regulative principles of a Brahmana. Text 64. Thus Ajamila began spending whatever money he had inherited from his father to satisfy the prostitute with various material presentations so that she would remain pleased with him. He gave up all his Brahmanical activities to satisfy the prostitute.
Can we read the purport of 64 and 65, Balram?
Just have to charge. Okay, purport. There are many instances throughout the world in which even a purified person being attracted by a prostitute spends all the money he has inherited. Prostitute hunting is so abominable that the desire for sex with a prostitute can ruin one's character, destroy one's exalted position, and plunder all one's money. Therefore, illicit sex is strictly prohibited. One should be satisfied with his married wife, for even a slight deviation will create havoc. A Krishna conscious Grahastha should always remember this. He should always be satisfied with one wife and be peaceful simply by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Otherwise, at any moment, he may fall down from his good position, as exemplified in the case of Ajamila. Text 65. Because his intelligence was pierced by the lustful glance of the prostitute, the victimized Brahmana Ajamila engaged in sinful acts in her association. He even gave up the company of his very beautiful young wife, who came from a very respectable Brahmana family. Balram, can you move it up?
I can read the purpose if you want me to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Haribol, thanks, Malini. Purport. Customarily, everyone is eligible to inherit the father's property, and Ajamila also inherited the money of his father. But what did he do with the money? Instead of engaging the money in the service of Krishna, he engaged it in the service of a prostitute. Therefore, he was condemned and was punishable by Yamaraja. How did this happen? He was victimized by the dangerous, lustful glance of a prostitute.
Yeah, so then here actually it is given how he started gliding down because he was associating with a low class woman. Previously, it is said that if you have to associate outside of your marriage, it was never within a Brahmana family. It was always in a lower class family. So even though Ajamil had good parentage, he was actually from a Brahmana family. He had a lot of money that he inherited from his father, but then he could not use it in the service of Krishna. Instead, actually, he glided down. But only if he had the right association. If he had a right association, then he could have actually avoided this. That's why in our Krishna consciousness, in Krishna consciousness, one of the most important thing is to have association of very good Vaishnavas. Because let's say even if we are straying in our path of Krishna consciousness, if we have some good association and right advice, timely advice, then we can be saved from the greatest danger. So one of the very important lessons to be learned from this is that we should always aspire and we should pray for good association who would help us to stay on the path of Krishna consciousness. We might be having all conducive situations, but at any time we can be victimized by Maya. Maya is very strong, so we should be very attentive. At the same time, always pray for the right association. Prabhu, can we finish Mataji, can we finish the translations of this chapter? Mataji, you're on mute.
Okay. Text 67.
Okay, can you hear me? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Mataji.
This rascal, although born of a Brahmana family, this rascal, bereft of intelligence because of the prostitute's association, earned money somehow or other, regardless of whether properly or improperly, and used it to maintain the prostitute's sons and daughters. This Brahmana irresponsibly spent his long lifetime transgressing all the rules and regulations of the Holy Scripture, living extravagantly and eating food prepared by a prostitute. Therefore, he is full of sins. He is unclean and is addicted to forbidden activities. This man, Ajamila, did not undergo atonement. Therefore, because of his sinful life, we must take him into the presence of Yamaraja for punishment. There, according to the extent of his sinful acts, he will be punished and thus purified. And that's it.
Mm. So these are the arguments that the Yamadutas gave to the Vishnudutas, saying that because of all these things, now he has to be taken to Yamaloka. And then in the next chapter, the Vishnudutas very beautifully describe the power of the chanting of the holy name, and how, because even though Ajamil, he actually did not say the Lord Narayan's name thinking of Lord Narayan, he actually said the name of Narayan offenselessly. So a lot of in our we chant the 10 offenses to the holy name, and one of the offenses is to commit sinful activities on the strength of the holy name. But when Ajamil actually chanted the name Narayan, though he was actually calling his son, he did not chant the holy name because he wanted to counteract his previous sinful activities. That was not his intention. He was innocent. He was innocently started chanting the name of Narayan. Actually, the very first time when the sages actually asked his son to be named Narayan, the first time he uttered the name of Narayan, that is the time when all of his sinful reactions actually started eradicating. Because the name itself is very, very, very powerful, the holy name of Krishna. And then, even though he was performing sinful activities after that, he was doing it unknowingly. But the name of Narayan was chanted offenselessly. Because of this offenseless chanting, whenever this name was chanted, the Vishnu Dutas actually came running to protect to protect Vishnu's devotees. And there are some very beautiful verses that the Vishnu Dutas give for the regarding the power of the chanting of the holy name. And if you can go, Balaram, to second chapter, verse number 7. Yeah, please, somebody would like to read.
Ajamila has
Go ahead. Shamala Prabhu, go ahead.
Ajamila has already atoned for all his sinful actions. Indeed, he has atoned not only for sins performed in one life, but for those performed in millions of lives. For in a helpless condition, he chanted the holy name of Narayan. Even though he did not chant purely, he chanted without offense, and therefore he is now pure and eligible for liberation. Purport, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhu, you can read purport.
Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The Yamadutas had considered only the external situation of Ajamil. Since he was extremely sinful throughout his life, they thought he should be taken to Yamaraj and did not know that he had become free from the reactions of all his sins. The Vishnudutas therefore instructed that because he had chanted the 4 syllables of the name Narayana at the time of his death, he was freed from all sinful reactions. In this regard, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes the following verse from the Smriti Shastra. Namna hi yavati. Mataji, you can read that.
Namno hi yavati shakti papa nirharane hare tavat kartum na shaknoti patakam pataki naraha.
Simply by chanting one holy name of Hari, a sinful man can counteract the reactions to more sins than he is able to commit. Brihad Vishnu Puran. Mataji, you want to read the sloka?
Avashenapi yannamni kirtite sarva patakai puman vimuchyate sadyah simha trishtaye mrigor iva.
If one chants the holy name of the Lord, even in a helpless condition, or without desiring to do so, all the reactions of his sinful life depart. Just as when a lion roars, all the small animals flee in fear in Garuda Puran.
Sakrit Uchcharitam Yena Harir Ityakshradvayam Baddha Parikarastena Moksha Gamanam Prati.
By once chanting the holy name of the Lord, which consists of the two syllables Ha-ri, one guarantees his path to liberation. Skanda Puran. These are some of the reasons why the Vishnudutas objected to the Yamadutas taking Ajamila to the court of Yamaraj. Text.
Please read the translation and purport. 8.
The Vishnudutas continued, even previously, while eating and at other times, this Ajamila would call his son, saying, "My dear Narayan, please come here." Although calling the name of his son, he nevertheless uttered the full syllables, Narayana. Simply by chanting the name of Narayan in this way, he sufficiently atoned for the sinful reactions of millions of lives. Purport. Previously, when engaged in sinful activities to maintain his family, Ajamil chanted the name of Narayan without offenses. To chant the holy name of the Lord just to counteract one's sinful activities or to commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name is offensive. Namna balad yassahi papa buddhi. But although Ajamila engaged in sinful activities, he never chanted the holy name of Narayan to counteract them. He simply chanted the name of Narayan to call his son. Therefore, his chanting was effective. Because of chanting the holy name of Narayan in this way, he had already vanquished the accumulated sinful reactions of many, many lives. In the beginning, he was pure. But although he later committed many sinful acts, he was offenseless because he did not chant the holy name of Narayan to counteract them. One who always chants the holy name of the Lord without offenses is always pure. As confirmed in this verse, Ajamila was already sinless, and because he chanted the name of Narayana, he remained sinless. It did not matter that he was calling his son. The name itself was effective.
Nama Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shuddha Nitya Mukto Bhinnatvam Nama Namino. The name of Lord and Lord himself, they are non-different. That's why when you say the name, it is actually as good as actually seeing the Lord. So Prabhu, actually we can read the translation of the next verse and then we can go to the 11th purport also.
Okay. The chanting of the holy name of Lord Vishnu is the best process of atonement for a thief of gold or other valuables, for a drunkard, for one who betrays a friend or relative, for one who kills a Brahman, or for one who indulges in sex with the wife of his guru or another superior. It is also the best method of atonement for one who murders women, the king of his the king or his father, for one who slaughters cows, and for all other sinful men. Simply by chanting the holy name of Lord Vishnu, such sinful persons may attract the attention of the Supreme Lord, who therefore considers, because this man has chanted my holy name, my duty is to give him protection. By following the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies or undergoing atonement, sinful men do not become as purified as by chanting once the holy name of Lord Hari. Although ritualistic atonement may free one from sinful reactions, it does not awaken devotional service. Unlike the chanting of the Lord's names, which reminds one of the Lord's fame, qualities, attributes, pastimes, and paraphernalia. Purport.
So this is the real thing for a devotee. Of course, for a devotee, sinful reactions and everything, of course, they are not so much permanent because everybody is already chanting the holy names of the Lord, and many sinful reactions from many past births have been eradicated. But the real thing that is mentioned in this verse is by chanting the holy name of the Lord, this one develops devotional service to Krishna by that. That is the most important thing that a devotee is looking for. Devotee is not afraid that they will go to Yamaloka or something like that. The most important thing for a devotee is actually to pray, to perform devotional service to Krishna. And through the chanting of the holy name, one actually gains the affinity to perform devotional service. Prabhu, please read the purport for that one, Prabhu, if you can.
Srila Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur comments that the chanting of the holy name of the Lord has special significance that distinguishes it from the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies of atonement for severe, more severe, or most severe sinful actions. There are 20 types of religious scriptures called dharma shastras, beginning with the Manu Samhita and Parasara Samhita. But herein it is stressed that although one may become free from the reactions of the most sinful activities by following the religious principles of these scriptures, this cannot promote a sinful man to the stage of loving service to the Lord. On the other hand, chanting the holy name of the Lord even once not only frees one immediately from the reactions of the greatest sins, but also raises one to the platform of rendering loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is described as Uttama Sloka because he is famous for his glorious activities. Thus, one serves the Lord by remembering his form, his attributes, and pastimes. Srila Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur explains that this is all possible simply by chanting the Lord's holy name because of the Lord's omnipotence. What cannot be achieved through the performance of Vedic rituals can be easily achieved through the chanting of the Lord's holy name. To chant the holy name and dance in ecstasy is so easy and sublime that one can achieve all the benefits of spiritual life simply by following this process. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declares, Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. All glories to Sri Krishna Sankirtan. The Sankirtan movement we have started offers the best process for becoming purified of all sinful reactions and coming immediately to the platform of spiritual life.
Prabhupada actually sums up everything so nicely here, saying that the chanting of the holy name not only gets rid of sinful reactions, but more importantly, it will bring us to the platform of spiritual life. And let's read one last verse in purport, that is 18th one, the same chapter, 18th. Prabhu, if you can read the translation of purport.
As a fire burns dry grass to ashes, so the holy name of the Lord, whether chanted knowingly or unknowingly, burns to ashes without fail all the reactions of one's sinful activities. Fire will act regardless of whether handled by an innocent child or by someone well aware of its power. For example, if a field of straw or dry grass is set afire, either by an elderly man who knows the power of fire or by a child who does not, the grass will be burned to ashes. Similarly, one may or may not know the power of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, but if one chants the holy name, he will become free from all sinful reactions.
This is so encouraging. Knowingly or unknowingly, the power of holy name actually has so much of power to eradicate all the sinful reactions. So I was just thinking how fortunate we are that we are in the movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that we know the highest, that is solution, which is the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. We have this opportunity and we should take it up and we should chant ourselves. Of course, we should chant to purify ourselves. At the same time, we should also introduce this holy name to everybody else, because people in this world may not know that they're even performing sinful reactions like Ajamil was doing. The best thing that we can offer them is ask them to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. They may not know, but we know that the once they chant the holy name, then everything is destroyed and they have an opportunity to come to the platform of pure devotional service. So devotees actually, they actually are desiratories and they always think good for other people, how to do good for other people. Same is with Parikshit Maharaj. He didn't have to go to hell, but he's asking all these questions so that how other people can be benefited and how they can avoid this hellish condition. Not only that, but actually get to the pure devotional service. And so I was just thinking the 5 lessons that I was inspired by this story of Ajamil is that first lesson I thought was association. Always try to get the right to association and try to avoid other association, and also have friends in your devotional service who are you have such a relationship that if they see you astray, they will pull you back into devotional service. The second lesson is that I thought that one should be satisfied in the life with whatever we have. Though Ajamil had so many things, he had beautiful wife, good family, high parentage, lot of money, but still, because he was not satisfied with whatever he had, because of an exposure to something insignificant, he actually fell down so much and he degraded himself. So that's why we should try to be satisfied and be grateful for whatever we have in our life. Third thing is we should have a healthy fear of Maya. No matter how advanced a person is, a devotee is, we should always have a healthy fear of Maya and always try to put in ourselves in a position that we are praying constantly for the mercy of Krishna and to be protected from this Maya. The fourth one is teach Hare Krishna Mahamantra to anyone and everyone we see, so that we benefit them, that we already discussed. And the fifth one is never give up the chanting of the holy name of Lord Krishna and make that as our primary service. Doesn't matter how many services we have, doesn't matter how many important things we have to do, but somehow or other we have to make the chanting of Hare Krishna as the most important and the prime service that we can do for our spiritual master and for Krishna. Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to read along with all of you and to share a few things. If anybody has any reflections or any comments, questions, can take now.
Hare Krishna, Mataji Dandavat Pranam, for such a wonderful and inspiring class. And thank you for sharing those principles. So one thing that I was thinking so nicely, it came up. Actually, this is a situation that is kind of applies to every one of us. I just wanted to know your perspective that because these principles of chanting the holy name is stressed in all the great religions, and everywhere it is emphasized the Lord's holy name and the principles also, association and all, they are stressed. So in fact, the Hare Krishna Mahamantra meaning is that is the most attractive, and He is the supreme Lord. So it does not it's not any sectarian thing. So I just wanted to know your perspective on the non-sectarian nature or the Sanatan nature, that it can be, applied to basically anybody can benefit from any background by taking shelter of the teachings and the mantra. I just wanted to know your perspective on that.
Actually, Srila Prabhupada, when he came to America, when the people, the devotees who were here, they were from different backgrounds. Not only that, they were all hippies. They were doing the all kinds of things at that time were not socially customary that they were doing. But Prabhupada never discriminated that this person is qualified to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra or not. He actually gave the medicine, the right medicine, and the only medicine in the age of Kali Yuga. There is no other medicine but chanting of the holy name of Krishna. And this can be applied to any sects or any kind of religious practices. As you already know that Harinama Kevalam Kalo Nasteva 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 Gatiranyatha. In the age of Kali, the only thing that can actually help us to liberate is a chanting of the holy name. And the names sometimes may be different because I know that some people are attached to chant Vishnu Sahasranam, and in different religions, different sects, they all chant the names of God, but maybe in a different way. But not to be too sectarian, everybody is encouraged to chant the names of God. That is definitely the first principle. But if they can chant the name of Hari, Harinama, then they will not only get rid of their sinful activities, but because of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, they will also achieve the Krishna Prema, which is not achievable by by other mantras. So in that way, this Hare Krishna Mahamantra given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to us is the highest benediction, because it is actually, it has wrapped with a wreath of prema with it. So not just getting rid of sinful reactions, but you're also experiencing the devotional service to Lord Krishna.
Thank you, Malini. I was also thinking that Ajamila saw one instance of the, like, how people were enjoying, but in this day and age, like, it's at every corner. Our children get to see, but still the holy name is so powerful that we still see pure devotees and they don't fall down. And I was just thinking how much powerful Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is, that in spite of all that, they are they're reaping the benefit of the holy name in Kali Yuga. The power of the holy name keeps on increasing. Maybe you can also add some light on that, like how
that is a wonderful point, Mataji. Yeah. Ajamil's story, maybe, as you said, is just one incident, but in this age of Kali Yuga, those incidents are innumerable. But fortunately, as you mentioned, the holy name is so merciful that we are able to chant and being immune from all these things. But at the same time, we should also be very careful that we shouldn't take it for granted that, oh, I have the holy name, I don't have to worry. But as and when the things are becoming more and more degraded in the age of Kali Yuga, our intensity to chant also should increase, and taking shelter of Krishna should also increase. Not just mechanically chanting, but really chanting with feeling for getting shelter of the holy name. Thank you, Mataji.
Mataji, one more question. Sometimes, Ajamil was fortunate that sadhus came and they gave them Narayan. But sometimes, in our case, what happens, like, it's a common practice to give nicknames. Like Srinivas becomes Srini. Then there are several such, examples. So what will happen to that? Will they get benefit? Or Ramakrishna become Ramki, like that, several, even in our community, Balaram can become Ballu. So what will happen?
Yeah, I mean, devotees actually, they are constantly chanting the holy names. They are not worried that at the time of death, will I be able to chant the names of Krishna or not? Because through the entire life, they have been chanting and serving the Supreme Lord. So at the time of death, even we don't remember Krishna, Krishna will come and help us. The verse in Ishopanishad says, Hiranmayena patrena satyasya mukham. Oh, not that one. The verse after that, where the devotee is saying, now my Lord, at the time of death, please remember what all I have done for you. And please come and protect me. So devotee is not worried about how they will leave their body. Their entire life, they are chanting the holy name and they do service for Krishna. Krishna will take care of the rest of the things. But affection is there, of course, when you call somebody with their names.
Thank you.
I hope it's okay, Prabhu.
Yes. Thank you, Mataji. Yeah, that helps.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Haribol. Please go ahead. Sindhu Kanya, please go ahead. Can you hear her? I can't hear her.
We heard her the first time, Mataji, when she said Hare Krishna. After that, we cannot.
Yeah.
So maybe in the meantime, I can ask one
Hare
question.
Krishna, Mataji, can you hear me?
Yes, Sindhu Kanya.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, there was an internet connection problem. I just wanted to share a reflection. I really liked how you said that Ajamil had his fall down because he didn't have devotee association. And I was just listening to a lecture by Vaisheshika Maharaj, and he emphasized on how we should always pray to Krishna that, don't let me go away from you, and like allow me to chant your names, because we can't chant on our own endeavor, and we can only chant by the mercy of Krishna and the mercy of devotees. And yeah, I really like a point that he made about having devotee association, and how having like periodic like health checks on your devotional practice.
I think we are losing you again, Sindhukanya.
Of what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, we lost the last part of what you said, but I got the gist that how you were saying that how we have to emphasize on devotee association and how important it is for us to have periodic checks. Yes, the most important thing, sadhu sangha. Yes. Thira Prashanta Prabhu, are you saying something?
Yes, Mataji. I just wanted to share a reflection. Hare Krishna. Thank you for the wonderful class and walking us through the life of Ajamil. I think one thing I definitely reflected on was, don't commit sins. Sin is not only like painful in this life, but also in the next life. Sorry for the background noise, Mataji. My Petraf is on some music class. So one thing I wanted to ask the question was about the words Neho Vikramanaswasti, right? Remember you kind of quoted that words. So one way to look at that words is, Krishna is giving us, affirmation that, hey, don't worry, just perform, next life you pick from where you left, right? But the other way to look at that verse is, as a devotee, right, we should not be complacent, right? So could you talk about, what are the things we should avoid, what are the precautions we should take so that we don't take, like that words, like, in a lighter way, but still, like, get the business done in this year, as our Guru Maharaj often says, right? So could you talk more about, why we should not be complacent, in certain areas, and what precautions we should take? I think you quoted some of them, like, association, I got that, but maybe like more insights.
Yeah, I mean, that's a nice question. Nectar of Instruction also says, Atyahara prayasascha prajalpa niyamagraha. There the 6 things that you have to avoid. At the same time, he actually gives Tadadi pratiganati bhushyamakhyadi prichati. So he gives 6 activities that you have to perform. So if we try to follow those instructions given in Nectar of Instruction, that can actually help us. One is pravritti, which means we need some positive association. Other is like which we don't want to get into it. So if we follow those principles and get guidance on a regular basis, then we can practice devotional service in a balanced way, like that.
Thank you, Mataji.
Can I add something here?
Please. Thank you.
So, Srila Prabhupada writes in his talks, he mentions that when we talk of destiny is something that is limited in the human form of life, and that destiny is specifically referring to the material things that can be either accomplished, or the money, or the wealth, or the family, and so on and so forth. That is limited in this human form of life, and that's where the satisfaction has to come, because Krishna is saying yadrichaya labha santushto. So there is that stuff that actually says that be satisfied. But on the other hand, Dhira Prashanta Prabhu, Srila Prabhupada writes, there is no limit to the spiritual advancement that you can make. And so we become more and more greedy. Okay, let me get more, because the chance is there. I'm not bound by destiny, rather bound by my own. And I'm specifically referring to me, Srivas Pandit Das, who is so lazy. But I should realize that
more. There is a more opportunity. There is a more opportunity. Why not? Just like if you have to go on a trip to Europe, for example, there is a greed. I need to see the maximum number of spaces. And I do hear some of the family members whom I don't want to name. Why are you going there and sleeping? What is the point in sleeping? Because you need to get in and kind of go and see the place. Are you here to sleep? You can go back home and sleep. Why don't you do it now? So you can see that kind of excitement can also come in spiritual form of life, which says there is no limit to how much I can advance in spiritual life versus materially, yeah, it's kind of fixed. So let's not chase too much. Sorry to interrupt that thing, Malini, but just wanted to.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, Madhu.
Thank you so much for adding that. Okay. Okay, looks like no more questions or comments. We can. I don't know what is the program after this one. Balaram, somebody.
Matthew, after this we'll end the call in the live stream.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming and listening. You're also sincere because of your association. Somehow I was able to speak something. Thank you very much. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripasindubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Mantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai.
Thank you, Mataji.